Okay, so quick show of hands. How many of you would say that you buy groceries more than you eat out? And of those folks, how many of you use Instacart? I'm pretty sure that's actually like 2 or 3. And we're supposed to be like the core demographic for Instacart. So I think that we're going to discuss that now. Please welcome to the stage Apoorva Mehta from Instacart and our moderator, Megan Rose Dickey.
Hey, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me here.
Of course. So I've heard that you had a few failed attempts at startups before launching Instacart. So Instacart was basically your backup plan to back up your backup plan, it seems. Is Instacart your winning ticket, would you say?
That's a great question. I think, so I started about 20 companies before starting Instacart. What was interesting was that none of those companies had the traction or the customer engagement that we saw with Instacart. Mm-hmm. So Instacart was never really a backup. It was the product.
So that was the plan all along? It just took you a little while to get there?
I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to, hindsight is 2020. But the reality is, when I started Instacart, I knew that this product was going to work. That was not the feeling that I had with any other product. And I mean, the results are, show for themselves. Today, we're in 26 markets in the United States. We're launching a market every single month on average. Of course, we've grown tremendously. Since the beginning of last year, our revenue has grown by about 500%. We have, the customer engagement is just incredible. Today, an average Instacart customer uses Instacart to get their groceries, and they spend about $250 a month on Instacart.
Okay. And are these repeat?
Yeah. So we get 90% of our customers are repeat customers. And what's interesting is that Instacart Express customers. Instacart Express is the program where once you buy the subscription, all your delivery fees for the rest of the year are free. Those customers spent about $500 a month on Instacart on average, which is incredible. Which means all their grocery shopping is done on Instacart. And so, frankly, I think that, those 20 startups that you talked about, those were just really me understanding what I wanted to do personally. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do when I started Instacart.
So the on-demand space is a tough category. Companies before you have tried and failed, RAP Webvan. What makes you think that Instacart is different, or why will Instacart succeed?
I mean, I think there's a couple important things in that question there, right? Like, look, what happened in the past and what's happening now? That's one thing. And the second part of the question is there's a bunch of on-demand companies out there, and how is Instacart different, right? And so when we think about what happened in the past, Webvan failed 15 years ago, right? Lots of things have changed. Of course, the broadband internet and all that. There's the fact that e-commerce is prevalent, but more importantly, the fact that people now have smartphones, and the penetration of smartphones is extremely high, which means that when you want to order your groceries, we can connect you with people who can shop for the groceries and bring them to your door. And this has never been the case before. And so, the question, I think, about why Webvan failed and why Instacart is going to be successful, I think that's a moot point at this point. I think the second question here is that there's a bunch of on-demand economy companies, right? And how is Instacart different? And I think it's very important to understand that not all on-demand economy companies are created equal. When people look at on-demand companies, what they look at is the fact that most on-demand companies have one or two sources of revenue. For example, for Uber, there's the customer pays money to get on the ride, right? For some food delivery companies, the customer pays money as well as the merchant pays money, right? But that looks very different for Instacart. So we, of course, have the customers who pay a delivery fee to get their groceries delivered. We have partnerships with hundreds of retailers in the United States today who also do a rev share with us. But we also have CPG companies such as Pepsi, as P&G, Unilever, and many, many others who promote their products on Instacart. And as a result of that, right, we have a third source of revenue that most people forget about. And so, the key point here is that all on-demand companies do not look the same. And frankly, our unit economics are really, really good. And as a company today, we can comfortably say that in the next 12 months, Instacart is going to be a profitable company.
Okay, and by profitable, do you mean where your revenues will exceed all of your debts, or what kind of profitability are we talking about?
Cash flow positive.
Cash flow positive. Okay, awesome. But to be honest, it seems like Instacart has kind of been struggling over the last year or so. I mean, at least if you look at the cut in wages for shoppers, then there were some layoffs of recruiters. So what's going on there?
I think you're right, that the problem that we're trying to solve is very hard. And it's just not a zero-sum game that we're trying to create. So let's just make it real. For the wages, right? 4 years ago when I started this company, right, none of these things existed. You couldn't get your groceries delivered within 1 hour. You just couldn't do that, right? And you couldn't get your groceries delivered from all the grocery stores in a market. Today, Instacart does that in 26 markets where you can get your groceries from all the grocery stores in your area, right? And so as a result of that, tens of thousands of people have an ability to earn a wage, right? And we grew to get to this point very, very fast. We went from just having 3 markets in the United States to 15 markets in the United States like this, right? And when you do that, right, when you grow so fast, obviously you're going to have adjustments that you're going to have to make, right? And so when we think about the wage changes we had to do, right, the reason why we had to do those was because the wages that made sense for the 3 markets, right, did not necessarily make sense for the 15 markets that we were in. Okay. And so we adjusted those, and today our NPS score for our shoppers is much higher than the NPS score for most of the on-demand companies' customers, which is incredible. And so that's what we think about from the wage perspective. And from the layoffs, look, again, we went from 90 people as a company last year, at the beginning of last year, to 300 people, right? And when we did that, the reason why we did that was because we didn't have a fully built-out finance team. We didn't have a fully built-out operations team. We didn't have the legal team built out. We didn't have the key foundations in the company built out, right? And so we had to build those out. And so that's why we needed a lot of recruiters to make that happen. After that, while we were continuing to hire, and we were continuing to hire a lot of data scientists, a lot of engineers, right? We're not hiring as many non-tech people. And so we had to make that hard decision. But the reality is, look, we're solving a very hard problem, and the way that people are buying groceries today is going to look very different in the next 5 years. And that's a result of all the work that the people at Instacart are going to do. And so we're going to have to continue to aggressively hire more and more people.
Okay. What's the biggest challenge that Instacart faces right now? Or what challenge, if you could just snap your fingers to make it go away, would that be?
I think look, we are solving some really, really hard problems. Let's just make it real. So the best grocery stores in the United States partner with Instacart today. We have hundreds of these retailers. And when we think about the partnerships with these grocery retailers, right? Like the level 1 partnership that we had, and that's when we sort of started partnering with these grocery stores. The partnership was, just bringing these grocery stores online and allowing them to offer their customers a 1 hour and 2 hour delivery, right? We did that, right? Now what we're doing is we're sort of building enterprise-level software for a lot of these retailers, so that not only can they analyze their sales on Instacart in a very advanced way, but also manage their merchandising, manage their inventory. And so the challenge that we face is a lot of these retailers are working with pretty archaic systems, and so we have to make the technologies that actually power their internal systems, and that's what we're doing. We're building deeper partnerships with those retailers, and that means integrating with their POS systems, integrating with their catalog systems, and those things make it very, very hard. But the reality is that, frankly, as a result of that, we don't really have to worry about competition much.
So a few months ago, Instacart expanded its relationship and partnership with Whole Foods and received a financial investment. I'm wondering about how much of your business and revenue comes from your partnership with Whole Foods.
Look, I think Whole Foods is a great partner, and we've worked with them very closely. We're very in multiple layers of the organization, and I think that it's one of the only partners that we have that has a location in all the markets that we're in, and I think that's very exciting. But what we're seeing is that we're innovating with multiple retailers at this point in time. For example, we launched one of the best grocery retailers in the country, Publix, recently, and the sales with Publix have been growing at about 12% week over week, which is incredible. I think what you will see, and I think the V1 of the partnerships is what is visible to a lot of the customers at this point in time, but over time what you will see is that more and more innovation with these retailers are going to be surfacing.
More specifically, could Instacart survive without the Whole Foods partnership?
We have over 100 grocery retailers at this point in time, and in many of the markets that we I'd say in most of the markets that we deliver from, Whole Foods market is not the biggest source of the volume. So we think that
is Publix the biggest source, or what's the biggest source of the volume?
I think it really depends on by market. For example, when we think about Bay Area, right? Or we think about San Francisco, we have smaller local retailers like Rainbow Grocery and Buy Right that people really want and really like, right? And that varies from different markets. For example, in New York, we have a retailer called Zabar's, which people love, right? And so we want to surface customers all the grocery selection that they want. And so it really varies.
Okay. And in addition to your partnerships with Whole Foods and Costco and Target, you mentioned that you also have partnerships with CPG brands like Coca-Cola and Unilever and Nestle and all of those. So how much of your revenue comes from those partnerships?
I think it's a great question. I think, look, let's step back a little bit, right? So CPG companies, who are they, right? You talked about Coca-Cola, Pepsi, P&G, and so on, right? These companies, annually they spend about $320 billion to promote their products to their customers. And this, in the way it manifests itself, is when you go to a physical grocery store, a brick-and-mortar grocery store, you see end caps, you see coupons, you see circulars, right? These are done by CPG companies, right? The fact is that this spend is highly inefficient, right? You can't accurately measure the ROI of this spend because it's happening in an offline way. You really can't target the customers that you want to acquire. And so Instacart's bringing that online. So let me give you an offline example of how this works, and then let me talk about how Instacart's bringing it online. So offline, so coupons are a really big deal. About 80% of the American customers use coupons in their grocery trips, right? And on average, these customers use 7 to 8 coupons per trip when they go to the grocery store. This is, again, not something that would be applicable to this audience.
Yeah, I think I'm doing grocery shopping all wrong. I've never used a coupon in my life, actually.
So a lot of the groceries, if you think about what United States looks like right now, it's not like what the Silicon Valley looks like, right? And so if you think about that, right, 7 to 8 coupons are clipped per trip. And the way this happens is that when you're, as a customer, you will receive a booklet in your mail. You will physically clip that coupon and take it to the store. You will take it to the store, you'll find the item in the aisle, right, that corresponds to that item. Then you will take it to the cashier, and then the cashier will validate that that's the same item as the coupon. And then they'll take that coupon and put it under the cash register. After they put it into the cash register, every week or every month or so, they will take all those coupons and mail them to Mexico, where a set of clearing agents will validate that the purchase was made with that coupon, right? And then maybe the retailer will get the money back. Right now, that's what happens, right? And we're bringing that online. And on Instacart, there are thousands of coupons that are available to customers. And all they have to do is one click, and they get added to the cart.
Right. And then every time a customer uses a coupon, that brand will pay you.
That's right. And so, not only does the customer see that saving from the coupon, CPG companies also pay Instacart to drive those sales. And today, 15% of our revenue now directly comes from CPG companies. Over the next few years, that is going to go up to 40 to 50%.
Okay, let's talk competition for a bit. So there's Postmates. Postmates could, in theory, deliver your groceries. They deliver food. There's Amazon. There's Google. How are you going to beat all of those companies?
I think it's a great question. I mean, look, there's a bunch of companies in this space, right? But the reality is, no one's going as deep into groceries as we are. No one's as laser focused on groceries as we are. And the reality is, I mean, yesterday there was a news about Google Shopping Express shutting down their grocery delivery offering. And grocery delivery is hard. It's not for the faint of heart, right?
Right.
And so what we're going to see is that no one is going to go so deep into this category. We're going to be the category leader when we think about groceries. And so let's make that real. So today, right, when we think about the selection that's offered, like I talked about all the grocery retailers working with Instacart, right? Not only do they work with Instacart, they work exclusively with Instacart. So as a result of that, the selection that's available on Instacart is just not available anywhere else, right? And that makes it very difficult for other companies to compete. Not to mention, it's not just the customer-facing things that really matter. Of course, we have an incredible set of apps and so on, but it's also about what we do behind the scenes. When we think about the people who are picking the groceries, we go through the effort to train them to pick avocados, and we build technologies that enable them to accurately and efficiently pick groceries. And that is very hard. When we think about that stuff and scaling that across the country, I really doubt when competition's really that important for us.
Okay, and you mentioned just the workers who are in the store, actually picking the food off of the shelf, and then sometimes getting into the car and driving it themselves, or giving it to a driver to then deliver that to the customers. There's been a conversation about the divide of workers in the on-demand economy. So you have your corporate employees with great pay and great benefits, and then you have the 99% on the ground, like doing the labor that actually makes your company work. How do you take care of the 99%?
Well, I don't consider as the 98%. What I think about it, and the way that we do this at Instacart, is that we want to make sure that our shoppers are getting compensated fairly, right? And we work really, really hard to make that happen. And that means doing a lot of things in the back end to enable that. So, for example, how do we make sure that the efficiency of picking groceries and delivering groceries is very high, right? Mm-hmm. No one else is thinking about that problem as much as we are. And that means like thinking about how do we get our shoppers to not have to wait in line when they're at the checkout, right? That saves them 7 minutes per delivery. And just by doing that, that allows them to become more efficient so that they can deliver more sets of orders. And when they do that, they earn more money, right? And so we think about those things because it is very important for us to be successful with shoppers being successful.
Right. What's diversity like at Instacart? I know that Instacart hasn't come out with a diversity report. A lot of companies at your stage have. Can you? So yeah, why is there no Instacart diversity report?
Actually, that's a great question. We're going to be releasing that in the next couple of months.
In the next couple of months?
Yes.
Okay, can I get the exclusive on that? Everyone can just pretend like they didn't hear you just mention that.
I can't comment on that. Look, I think diversity is something that we take very seriously in Instacart. I mean, I think that, you know, as in Silicon Valley and other startup companies, I just feel like I don't think we talk about it enough. I think the reality is that as startups, we are forming what the corporate culture looks like in the next 20 years, right?
Right.
And so we have a chance to set the precedent of what that could be like in the next 20 years, right? And so we really need to take the opportunity to make that happen. And at Instacart, we're doing a lot of things to make that happen. So, and you know, I'll just list out a few things that we've done just recently. As a company, we've all gone through an unconscious bias training, right?
Okay.
And it's not just that we've done the unconscious bias training, we are implementing rigor in all the processes that we have to bring on people at Instacart. So, you know, we are looking at the data from every step of the way. How many people applied? What was the background of all those people that applied, right? Are we doing our job right in the way we communicate in the job description?
Okay.
And later in the process, in the interview process, are we being thoughtful about the fact that there may be this bias that exists, right?
Right.
And so we're looking at that in a very quantitative way so that we can actually improve the processes that we have at Instacart. And not to mention, it's not just about the hiring process, it's also about, as a company, are we just a great place for people to work? And so we have started employee resource groups definitely for women, but also for many other groups as well. We have started mentorships at Instacart, and there's a lot that we want to be doing and we're going to be doing.
Okay, last question, just because we're out of time. Is Instacart going to sell to Whole Foods?
I think, well, look, I mean, the reality is that Instacart works with lots of different grocery stores. So it just doesn't make sense, I mean, for us to even think about selling to a grocery store. And not to mention, as a company, what we want to achieve, the best path for us is to become and to continue to be an independent company.
Okay, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.